Hey, what's going on everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a fun build that I have made for Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. Couple things right off the bat, this is not min-maxed in any way. Also, think of this more as a guide. If you want to play around with options, do so. I promise you it's not illegal. Go crazy. Do whatever you want. Moreover, keep in mind that this is still a beta, so ultimately things are a bit subject to change. Also, I'm not min-maxing here. I'm not a min-maxer, which tends to surprise people because I 100% CRPGs a lot, kind of as a focus of my channel in a lot of ways. But something I've learned in doing all of those 100% is that min-maxing is very rarely necessary. Because of that, I actually try to have fun with my builds while I play a game, which I know is crazy to some people. That's more important to me than like eking out every single possible point of damage. But again, play around with it, do you? That said, I have messed around with this quite a bit and it's pretty fun. So let's get started. We are going to be playing an Inquisitor Sacred Huntmaster as well as an Assassin. But before we get on to there, just a race and ability point allocation recommendation. Personally, I like to play this as an ASMR, specifically a Plumekith Heritage ASMR. This is going to give you +2 to Dex and Wisdom, as well as a +2 racial bonus to the mobility and athletics checks, as well as letting you use the invisibility spell once per day. Play whatever race and stuff you want. This is just personally what I like to do the most. The reason being, Inquisitors get spell slots from their Wisdom, and if I use Plumekith, I get that and Dexterity, which we're going to be using a longbow for this. So the Dex bonus is nice for our bow, and the Wisdom is nice for our spell slots, because that's where Inquisitors get them. Now, we are primarily using buffs. Now, ultimately, 12 Wisdom is still a little low for the spell slots. However, we're only ever going to have like 10 points in Sacred Huntmaster tops, so because of that, we're actually not going to be getting access to a lot of the higher end spell slot spells anyway. So combined with our racial bonus as well as items, specifically head items usually, that give you extra wisdom points, you're going to have plenty of wisdom to cast the spells you have access to. Now the rest of that I recommend dumping into dexterity. This is important because our modifier from dexterity is going to affect our longbow. So we definitely want as much dex as we can possibly get. So with your racial modifier, you're going to want to take that all the way to 20 straight off the bat. Now with what's left, I personally prefer charisma simply because I like my lead character to be the one doing all the persuasion and things like that. However, if that's not your speed, then you can always dump the rest into constitution for more health. Let's get into it from there. With your level 1 feat, I recommend you pick up Point Blank Shot. This is going to give you a +1 bonus attack to all your damage rolls and attack rolls with your bow up to 30 feet. And moreover, it is the prerequisite to what is going to be our level 3 feat, which is Precise Shot. This is going to remove the -4 penalty on attacking anything engaged in melee combat. Not necessarily with you, just engaged in combat in general. You take a -4 penalty on ranged weapons against those if you don't have this feat. Now, for the background, I like to use Nomad because it gives our pet just a tiny bit more health, but, honestly, whatever background you want to do is perfectly fine. Now, Inquisitors have to select a deity. So I prefer Norgorber because I prefer to play a lawful evil character. Honestly, overall, I like the knowledge domain the most because what domain a god has that you are Inquisitor for will affect some of the spells you earn through your domain. Now, right now, I went with the evil domain, which is going to give me access to these spells. At 8th level, I'll be able to touch a weapon and make it unholy and give it that modifier, as well as get certain specific domain spells as I level up. So this varies with whatever deity you have, but just pick something you like is the main thing. That's probably the least important part of this build, to be honest. Then we have our proficiencies. This is going to make us proficient with the longbow straight off the bat, which is what we're after, as well as light and medium armor, which is also what we're after. Inquisitors get access to cantrips as well as the ability to detect magic. Also, Inquisitors get Stern Gaze. They receive bonuses to Persuasion and Intimidation and Perception checks. Again, one of the reasons I like to pump things into Charisma instead of Constitution personally. The main focus of being an Inquisitor Sacred Huntmaster is that you get an animal companion, specifically I like to choose a Smilodon, or however that is pronounced, simply because they get a ton of attacks and they get multi-attack later, and I feel like they do the most damage for me personally. Again, pick whatever animal companion you want. It's not that important. Personally, I think the Smilodon I've had the most success with, and I feel like at least it does more damage than the other ones, so that's the one I like to pick. And then lastly, where we picked our evil domain. We are going to put 5 points into our Sacred Huntsmaster levels. Get all the way to 5. For feats, I already said point blank and precise on 1 and 3. On level 5, I recommend weapon focus for your longbow, give you some extra bonus on your attack rolls again. This is also going to give us access to the Inquisitor's Bane. So for a number equal to our Inquisitor levels, we will be able to activate Bane, which will basically give us 2d6 extra damage against foes. Now it says you have to designate a foe, however the game does this for you, so you don't actually have to pick anything. We also get Cunning Initiative at level 2, which gives us extra points to our initiative checks. And then at level 3 we pick up Solo Tactics and Hunter Tactics. Solo Tactics is going to make it essentially give your allies teamwork feats for the Inquisitor of giving the Inquisitor the bonus, and while your allies won't actually benefit from it, your Inquisitor will. Then we get Hunter Tactics. This gives our teamwork feats to our animal companion. And then last but not least, at 3 and level 5, we're going to pick up some of the teamwork feats I just mentioned, which are extra feats that we get for being a Sacred Huntmaster. For starters, pick up Precise Strike. This is going to give you 1d6 of precision damage whenever you and an ally are flanking. Keep in mind, this also extends to our pet, so even though we are using a ranged bow, thus being away from our allies a decent amount of the time, your pet will still pick up from this and be able to do extra damage through it. Moreover, if you're playing with 2 archers, you can keep them close together and thus benefit from this from your other archer companion. And then on level 5, I like to pick up Outflank, because whenever you and an ally who also has this are flanking a creature, you will get +4 to your attack rolls. Again, for your animal companion as well as any team members you actually give this feat to, that's a pretty big bonus to your attack rolls. If you recall, I said only go through level 5. So we're actually not going to get that second teamwork feat right off the bat, because once we hit level 5, what are we going to do? So at that point, we are going to put points into Assassin, specifically 2 points. So at level 5, we should meet the qualifications for Assassin if we picked an evil character, which is required for this build to work. Because in order to become an Assassin, we have to be playing an evil character as well as have 5 points in Stealth. If we have that, then at level 5, which is when we can actually put 5 points into Stealth, we can pick up points in Assassin. Now on our first level, we're immediately going to pick up our Sneak Attack. So it starts at 1d6. Every extra sneak attack level we get later gives us more 1d6 points of damage as sneak attacks against enemies that would be flat-footed. At level 1, we will also get access to poisons that we can start using to attack our enemies' ability points, doing tons of damage to their, ability scores and thus their modifiers, as well as getting access to Death Attack. Death Attack requires a melee weapon, and thus we won't be using it very much, as well as you will pick up some extra proficiencies for being an assassin. Then at level 2, we're going to get a little extra bonus against poison, as well as pick up Uncanny Dodge. This basically makes it much more difficult to catch you flat-footed, thus, removing your dex modifier from your AC. Now, once we have those 2 points in Assassin and we've picked up our Uncanny Dodge and our Sneak Attack, I actually recommend you go back and put 2 more points into Sacred Huntmaster. This is going to give us our second teamwork feat, Outflank, which is going to be helpful. And then we don't get much for level 7 at all, but it is the level that our animal companion becomes large size. So it's important to note that your animal companion is only the level of the class that gives you the animal companion. While it is still a useful pet because A, it takes up space, as well as benefits from all of our teamwork feats and everything, as well as, new with Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous, has its own upgrade tree, and thus you can pick feats for the pet. Keep in mind, our pet is going to be a bit lower level here, but we're going to make up for that through all of the sneak attack damage that we're getting and benefiting from the teamwork feats. Now, once you get that to 7, I recommend you put everything else into Assassin, because what we want are all these sneak attack dice. Moreover, as you level up, you're going to get more poisons, more poison uses, more resistance to poison. You're also going to get hide in plain sight at level 8, which will let you use stealth even while you're being observed, which is just helpful in general, though you don't necessarily have to use it. It also makes your poisons harder to get rid of when you use them. And then at the 10th level of being an assassin, you can actually apply the poisons as a swift action, which means instantly, basically. And then at the last level, Death Attack, again, we're not using that, so that's not super useful, but it will make it a standard action. Once we hit level 10 with our assassin, which will be pretty high level for us too, we're going to have just tons of sneak attack damage on top of our regular damage, on top of benefiting from all of our teamwork feats from our Sacred Huntmaster. Because once that's maxed out, we're going to go back to just putting points into Sacred Huntmaster, which at a max will have 10 of Huntmaster and 10 of Assassin. So that's kind of the gist of what we're doing there. And then last but not least, I'm talking feats. So feats unlock the same way for every character. You get one every other level, so every odd level basically. I'll throw up some recommendations of things I would recommend getting on the screen here, but again, feel free to mix it up. We're not like set in stone or anything. And now let's move it over to our spell book. So the 0 level spells, our Orisons, are just cantrips. You don't get to choose those, you just get them. And then for level 1, I personally like Bane, Bless, Stunning Barrier, Divine Favor, and Cure Light Wounds, but again, move it around a little bit. Divine Favor is probably the most useful because you can use it several times before combat to give yourself a little extra damage and attack roll bonuses. And then for level 2, Bone Shaker, Cure Moderate Wounds. Effortless is okay as well, depending on what you're doing. And then Restoration Lesser is great because that'll help you remove ability score damage without resting. And then level 3, we can pick up Cure Serious Wounds and Prayer. Prayer is going to give us a luck bonus to our attacks, as well as giving enemies a penalty to such rolls. Not really going to get that much more in the ways of spells. This is just kind of some recommendations and looking at it. But again, we're only going to level 10 on Huntmaster, so we're not going to wind up with that much to begin with. Now let's talk Mythic Paths. Personally, this should work with basically anything. I have a bunch of videos explaining the mechanics of every single Mythic Path if you're interested. If you're looking to do max DPS, you're probably going to want to go Trickster because they get a bunch of extra sneak attack dice as well as they rank up, which is going to give you even more sneak attack damage, which is where basically most of our damage is going to be coming from towards the end of this. Now, last but not least, let's talk armor. So, honestly, light or medium, whatever does it best for you. Basically, you're going to want a decent max dexterity bonus. But keep in mind, we're just going for high AC. So because this chainmail has such a high armor class and a 4 dexterity max bonus for your AC, it gives me more armor than, say, something that gave me like 8 max dexterity bonus. So just kind of keep that in mind. Now, luckily, it'll just tell you what your armor class is. So just pick whatever armor is going to give you the highest armor class is the big deal. And then again, using longbows, so whatever damage longbow you can get. And then the headpiece, it's very important that you are finding items that are going to give you wisdom. Because again, we need at least a +2 there to pick up more spell slots later for dumping all our points into dex and either constitution or charisma like I mentioned earlier. Now, when it comes to actually using this in combat, just some general tips. You're an archer, obviously try to hang back a little bit and let your melee companions do most of the fighting. But keep in mind, this is a game that actually has a lot more close quarters fighting than a lot of the Kingmaker fights, so you might find yourself next to stuff all the time. But while that's not a big deal is because we're getting teamwork feats when we do that, ideally, because we're going to be next to our companions in those tight quarters as well. So again, ideally benefiting from teamwork feats if we're giving them to our animal companion as well as all of our companions. So if I had to sum it up, this build basically just relies on the use of teamwork feats very effectively. If you're going to use this build, don't ignore them. They're a huge part of it. It'll be dramatically less effective if you do. So there you go, guys. That's kind of all I've got. I hope it wasn't too long-winded for you. I certainly hope you enjoy the build. I personally have a lot of fun with it. But with that said, truly, thank you for watching. The channel's growing all the time. I really do appreciate it. If this video does well, I might consider doing similar videos in the future. So, by all means, remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. If you think it's a cool build, show it to your friends, that kind of thing. But regardless, again, thank you so much for watching. May you wander in wisdom, and have an amazing day.